Well, gentlemen, we made it. Can you guys hear me?
We did. That is a great intro, Kevin. That is a terrific intro you put together.
Well, thanks. That one fires me up. I got to watch that every couple of days just to get the blood going and share with everybody out there what we're doing. And yeah, I appreciate that.
Makes you want to go shake a legislator, doesn't
it?
Hey, Ron,
you want to do a little bit more that.
Ron, I apologize. I forgot to bring the band in. With all that preparation, I forgot the musical band. So I'll make sure I get that next time.
I think they're taking pre-voter breaks, and I think everybody's getting out and letting their decisions be made at the voting booth, and we really appreciate all of that.
Well, we say hello to everybody. My name is Ken Quinn. I am the North Regional Director with U.S. Term Limits. And these are my colleagues, Ken Clark and Ron Hooper. Why don't you say hi, boys?
Hey, everyone. Good to see you. Ron Hooper from the Western States.
I am Ken Clark. I'm from the Southern States. And so there are three of us that divide up the entire United States of America, and it is a big job. So we've got a lot on our plates. We need your help.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little under the weather today, so this might be a shorter episode than typical. But if you are new to our organization, what we are working on is probably the number one issue supported by Americans today. That's congressional term limits. And we want to thank you for joining our weekly Facebook Live broadcast. And we are doing something that's never been done before. It's a historical effort. We are trying to get the state legislatures to propose term limits for members of the U.S. House and Senate. And before anybody asks in the comment sections, let me address what always comes up.
We cannot vote on it.
We can't vote for this, people. As much as we are all excited about voting next week, or if you haven't already voted, I voted already. This will not be on your ballot. You know why? Because we've been there, done that, and we got the T-shirts back in the 90s. 21 states voted on this effort, on this issue. And the U.S. Supreme Court in 1995 overturned all of those state laws. It was the case against our organization, U.S. Term Limits versus Thornton. And what the court ruled was the only way term limits can be placed on members of Congress is through the Article 5 amending provision. And there's only two ways to propose amendments. You need either both houses, 2/3 of both houses to propose the amendment and then have the states ratify it by 3/4. Now we know that's probably not going to happen. And so we are working on the second method of proposing amendments where we need 2/3 of the state legislatures to apply for the same amendments. And once we hit that critical number of 34 states, then Congress is forced to call the convention to allow the states to send their commissioners to draft the amendment, vote on it, and then it's out to the states for ratification. So that's it in a nutshell.
And that's where we spend a lot of our time. Most of our time is really working with those legislators and getting them to sign our term limits pledge so that we know that we can get it passed state by state. And it's been an effective year. This is a movement among voters that's really building up steam. I think one of the managers said, "Hey, you either get on the train or get ran over by the train." And this train really is building up speed. We can see it. It's becoming a popular item just among new legislators. They're making it front and foremost in their platform.
Yeah, and that video that we saw in the opening was showing the hundreds of legislators or candidates for the state legislature who've signed our pledge. And as of today, this is awesome, 1,100 candidates for the state legislatures around the country have signed the U.S. Term Limits Pledge. And 165 congressional candidates have signed. So that is overwhelming support. That is fantastic.
You know, that is a very big deal. And I think we really need to publicize that because 1,100, there are what, 4,700 legislators nationwide, state legislators. Is that right, Quinn? I can't remember the actual number, but it's like 4,700.
Yeah, I think it might be closer to 7 grand, but it's a significant. I think so.
Okay, well, I can't remember, and my mind's not really working today, so forgive me, but that's still a big deal. I mean, that's a bunch. That is overwhelming support, and it's because we, the people, all want it. So you're putting pressure on your candidates, your incumbents, your state legislators, and that's why we're having this kind of success. That kind of success will flow over to the legislative session, which starts in the most part for January. Some states start later, like Louisiana, Mississippi, etc. But for the most part, they start the second week in January. And that's when the three of us are going to be MIA and in the field most of the time. And we've got a lot of people on our staff that do that as well. Aaron Duquette, he's always on here. Shanna, Les, you're going to see Byron and Ann and a whole bunch of others, Jeff, all traveling to different states, lobbying and testifying in Senate hearings and House hearings. That's what we do. So it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, we're going to be introducing our Article 5 application. It's going to be as a resolution in a number of our state legislatures. And so, you know what? I'm a little concerned about the traveling because with all of this increase in the COVID cases, I know here in Maine, they're really starting to crack down. I just really hope that traveling doesn't
give me 1,000 emails from our supporters going to their legislative district saying, hey, do this. That's the most effective thing. So if you've called up and signed up into our system, we're going to ask you to reach out to your legislator and tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, this is important to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can tell you, as long as there's planes flying and doors are open, I'm going to be there.
Oh, I plan to as well. But my concern is a lot of the grassroots that typically would come to Capitol buildings. We might not get that kind of turnout. So we may be depending more on remote and social media and emails and electronic calls to action coming up. So anyway, we'll see what happens. We got a few more months to go and we'll see how things shake out. But I'm looking forward to it. That's where I love to be and testifying and sharing. What's really cool about this is that a lot of state legislators are not even aware of their authority under Article 5. And it's fun to educate them on the process. And once you see the light go off in their head, they realize, wow, instead of complaining about a lot of these issues, we can actually do something as a state legislature. And so we're hoping that when we get to convention for this one amendment, that it's going to open up opportunities for other great reforms to come from the states.
Well, you know, it's a little bit sad that the state legislators themselves don't understand their power under Article 5. I mean, the states themselves created the creature, which is the federal government. They have the power and the authority to rein it in if they just will. I mean, all it takes is intestinal fortitude and the gumption to do it. But they have to know their authority. And a lot of them truly don't. When you talk to them about this, they go, really? We can do that? Yeah. You want fries with that? Yeah. I mean,
well, it's a third rail. It's a third rail for a career politician. You know, he wants to stay away from this because once the state, I think one of you mentioned earlier, once the state realized that they really do have this kind of power, there's a lot of things that can be corrected. And we've become hostages to Congress, thinking they're the only ones that can get stuff done. State has tremendous power. It shows you the wisdom of our founders that it gave us 2 tracks to get a Article 5 amendment done. And it's shame on us that we haven't exercised this before, but it's a high bar. It's not easy to do. And that's the reason we're going to be successful is because we have one issue and one issue alone.
Yep. Amen to that, brother. Amen to that.
I kind of teased this episode a little bit about Article 5, and that kind of leads us into that discussion. So obviously next week is the elections, and hopefully we'll know by at least the next day of the results, but it may take longer than that. And hopefully all of you out there are participating in our elections. You know, that's the number one responsibility of an American citizen is to vote. But that is not our only responsibility or option to get things done. And that's the power of Article 5. And I kind of want to share with you one of my favorite framers is James Madison, very strong advocate for Article 5. In fact, near the end of the convention, he drafted pretty much the final wording of Article 5 at the Philadelphia Convention. So let me pull up. Okay, well, first of all, this is the congressional approval rating. Let me show you. Let me pop this up on the full screen here. So, as we all know, the approval rating of Congress has really been rather low for a number of years. This only goes back to 2017, but as of this month, it's at 15%, guys. 15%. And but what's the percentage of re-election going to be, do you think? What's the incumbency rate going to be after this election?
94%.
Yeah, 94, 95%. It typically is well into the high 90s. And unfortunately, the will of the American people is not reflected in the elections because the power of the incumbency. They have so many advantages over challengers that it's virtually impossible to get them out of office. So I don't want to be a downer. I just want you to prepare you. Obviously, we're hoping for good things to come from the upcoming elections, but James Madison has a great quote, and I want to share this with all of you because they understood that, there's going to be problems in our history with our government, and that you're going to see the power of Article 5. So let me just share with you this quick quote by James Madison. Okay, I forget what year. I think it was like 1796. And he's addressing some of the problems that may arise with governments. And this is what he says. He says, quote, "In the first place, the responsibility which every department feels to the public will under the forms of the Constitution may be expected to prevent the excesses incident to conflicts between rival and irresponsible authorities." So what he's basically saying here is, listen, the departments, in the first place, they should be responsible for their bounds, okay? But if they are not, if they overreach between departments, and of course we've been seeing that tremendously today, he said, if they happen to overreach and it becomes a problematic, then there's a second way of fixing it. And he goes into this. In the next place, if the difference cannot be adjusted by friendly conference and mutual concession, the sense of the constituent body brought into the government through the ordinary elective channels may supply a remedy. So what he's saying is, hey, if the system's broken, then elect better people to solve the problem through elections, right? That's what he's saying. And how often do we hear, we need to elect good people that will obey the Constitution, yet nothing seems to change. And that's where we find ourselves today. We're going to vote on, we're going to have the elections on Tuesday, but I want to prepare you all that not a whole lot is going to change. And that's where Madison talks about the Article 5 convention. He says this, and if this resource should fail, talking about elections, there remains in the third and last place that provident article in the Constitution itself by which an avenue is always open to the sovereignty of the people for explanations or amendments as they might be found indispensable, unquote. So that is what he's sharing, is that when things are not working out through responsibility between departments, if elections can't fix the problem, then it's up to the people through the Article 5 process to either propose amendments or draft amendments to explain the powers of the current enumerated powers in the Constitution. And that's what we're working on. We are using the last resort for congressional term limits so that we can start and begin a reform to bring other fixes to Washington. So
well, I like how a lot of people talk about the 10th Amendment, and I'm a big fan of the 10th Amendment, and I'm a huge believer in the 10th Amendment, but it doesn't have any teeth. There isn't a single action verb inside the 10th Amendment. Article 5 is the teeth of the 10th Amendment. And so it's the authority. It is the process that we as citizens follow in order to fix what's broken in DC. And I always say this, especially when I'm giving talks and speeches and what have you, but human nature hasn't changed in 5,000 years. It really hasn't. The only thing that's changed is technology. We are fundamentally the same. it is human nature to want to accumulate as much wealth and power under your own control as humanly possible, right? I mean, it is. Let's face it. Not everybody is built that way, but most people are. So why then do we elect these people to go to Washington, D.C. and expect them to act any different? We shouldn't. We should remove their ability to act different. So we should remove their ability to run roughshod over the United States. And I mean, all you have to do is take a look at all the corruption that's going on. I mean, it's headlines every day. There's new scandals coming out of DC, and it's broken.
You're right, Ken.
Everybody needs to vote. So if you, most counties and cities have ways to get you to the polling center. If you need transportation, just make sure that you have your voice. I know a lot of you have already done this, so good for you. But those that haven't, make sure you let your voice be heard.
Let me pull up one last quote by Madison, and this is probably his strongest quote in regards to Article 5. He said, "Should the provisions of the Constitution as here reviewed be found not to secure the government and rights of the states against usurpations and abuses on the part of the United States, the final resort within the purview of the Constitution lies in an amendment of the Constitution according to a process applicable by the states." There's the Article 5 convention. And so, that is what we're all about. And guys, yes, we need to vote. But if you think voting is going to change and make a big difference, then we're sadly wrong. We have got to rise up as the American citizens. This is our government. Demand that our legislators, our representatives at the state level, do our will and start fixing the federal issues down in Washington, D.C. through this process. Because if we don't exercise this right that we have, then I just don't see it getting much better over time.
I don't either.
I don't know.
Amen, brother.
So,
thanks all.
Article 5 power.
There you go. Power to the Article 5. What do you do that?
Article 5.
Yeah.
So anyway, any questions? Let's see if before we wrap up, if anyone has any questions for us, I'm going to take this out of the screen here, maybe pull up some comments from folks. And if you guys can see anything that we should address before we go, let's get them answered for folks. So, hey, everybody, I want to thank you all for joining us and supporting this. Please stay involved after the elections. We're going to need you because not a whole lot's going to change in Washington, D.C. because the power of the incumbent party is what's controlling everything. And until we take care of that problem, nothing's going to change. I hate to be a bummer. I'm not trying to be a bummer, but I'm a realist. Oh, there's the ballot question. How can we get it on the ballot? Alice, you can't. We can't vote for this. And so, unfortunately, it has to come through an amendment to the Constitution, and it's going to have to come from the states.
It passed the ballot in 23 states.
Yeah, it did.
And so it was obviously very popular. And then, of course, they decided that it was challenged by the Supreme Court in 1995. And that's the reason we have to do it by amendment. But it just shows the popularity. And it should have been honored. But anyway, it wasn't. And that's what we do.
Now,
there you go.
With the court now, you never know. Possibly could it get overturned by the Supreme Court in the future decision? Maybe.
That's a big maybe. That is a huge maybe. The Supreme Court, regardless of the makeup, is not big fans of overturning previous decisions.
No, it's not.
They just don't like to do that.
Yeah, so we can't trust in that. So that's why we have got to get the states behind this effort and get to a convention and just prove once and for all that the Article 5 process is nothing to fear. It was put in the Constitution as the way for the states to protect the liberties and securities of the American people from an overreaching federal government. And my goodness, can it get any worse than it is today? I just don't see it getting much worse. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, that's all I've got. If you have anything else you want to add,
I'm good to go.
All right, everyone. Listen, enjoy the. It's going to be a late night Tuesday night. We're going to be watching all of the pledge signing candidates. Hopefully, a bunch of them will win their races and give us an army of term limit supporters in the state legislatures. And we'll get this done in a number of states next year. So thank you for your support, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.